Welcome to Strange Coordinates, the show where we use brands as roadmaps to arrive at surprising places. I'm Robert Baylog.
And I'm Idon Sarakaya. Along with our partner Topher, Robert and I lead an advertising agency called Territorial after lifetimes of working with some of the biggest and best loved brands. We help brands find their place in the world. And we do that by exploring how history, culture, desire bounce off one another to reveal insights about what is cool about being human.
That's right. So normally what we do is we dive deep into some of the wild stories behind the brands that you love. But today we're going to do something a little different because we just finished hosting a webinar about AI. And now, if you have tuned in for the cults and the sex and the death squads and all the other stuff that you normally hear about on Strange Coordinate, don't be disappointed. We're going to dive into something really, really fascinating. Idon, how do you feel about this whole AI situation that we're finding ourselves in?
Well, you can't escape it. I feel like it's everywhere and part of common conversation, whether it was just the holiday weekend here in the US and I was home and talking to my parents about it. It's, in my newsletters the moment I wake up in the morning. So it's everywhere these days.
And we're not above that here at Strange Coordinates because, even in our Chiquita episode, we used AI, or at least I did. I did a little bit of a cheat there, and I used AI to help me write some of the script for that episode. Really fun stuff. We used AI to write stories in the voice of Hemingway about a massacre in Colombia. We used AI to write a Susian poem about Chiquita's role in the Colombian Civil War. So I don't. Maybe fun's not the word, but exciting stuff. I would
call that fun.
not fun. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely everywhere. It's the new ubiquitous conversation. For a long time, it was politics, and now it's AI. So maybe they're going to merge together, and that'll just be the worst conversation ever, and I will just stop talking. Okay, so listen, we're going to get into some really fun stuff. Why don't we just roll that wonderful webinar footage?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our inaugural Territorial webinar. Today, we are so excited to explore how AI can learn to love your brand. You already know that brand love is important with your potential customers, but pretty soon you're going to need to make AI love it too. I'm Idon Sarakaya, and along with my partners, Robert and Topher, we lead an ad agency called Territorial that helps brands find their place in the world. The idea for today's webinar started from something we noticed in media coverage, in conversations with others, and in our own early experimentations with AI. It seems like there's a lot of focus on AI as a tool, but not a lot of conversation about what AI is learning from us. What happens if we start to think about AI as a creative stakeholder? That's what we're going to explore today. Speaking to you today are going to be two guests. First up, we have Topher, who will be speaking on how to work with AI to create brand consistency at scale. Topher is an accomplished strategist whose behavior-led approach to building brands has powered some of the most inspired and forward-thinking companies in the world, including HBO, Twitch, Unilever, and NASA. The second half of our journey will be led by Brian Stempeck, speaking on how brands are consumed by bots in the world of AI-driven search. Brian is the CEO and co-founder of Evertune, helping businesses understand what AI is telling consumers about their brand through cutting-edge analytics. Brian comes from 14 years at the Trade Desk, where he most recently was the chief client officer and oversaw all of the company's relationships with agencies and advertisers. We'll be taking questions at the end, but please feel free to drop them in the chat as we go along. Over to you, Topher.
Awesome. Thanks, Idon. So I'm going to start our little chunk here with a bit of a big statement. Generative AI poses a major threat to your brand stability. And from our point of view, that's for two reasons. The first is that whether you like it or not, whether you've approved it or not, people are probably using generative AI to scale and implement your brand. And the reason is because the benefits just are so staggering, it's really hard to leave on the table. The second component there is that AI's strength is really juxtaposed and in very an oppositional relationship to where your brand is strong. So AI's strength is in its breadth. It draws from a wide variety of places, far more than you're able to do with your own brain or on your own team. whereas your brand is strong when it is super, super specific. So you can think about that almost as saying that AI is in this world of imagination, while your brand is really in this space of discipline. And those two can come into conflict pretty quickly. In order to demonstrate that, we did a little bit of an experiment. Um, I'm here in Portland. I'm a runner. And so I just pulled up a quick prompt and piped it over to ChatGPT, asking it to create a series of ads for a brand that is so well known that it's hard to think of another brand that is more ubiquitous in terms of searchable and discoverable content online. I asked ChatGPT to give me a few different Nike ads for an imaginary shoe that has a wide toe box, because who doesn't need a wide toe box, and that can take you from both running in the city and running on trails. And so asked it to come up with some imagery and use Nike's brand and its logo in those. So I'm going to show you a series of images. I asked it to make 6. The first one, you can see that it got the concept right. We're looking at city to trail. It's got an image of a shoe that's very believable. It even picked a cute name. But I want to focus as we're going through this on the brand elements that we're looking at here. First off, this is not a brand typeface that Nike uses on the top. So they made a little bit of a tagline. But you can see that the tagline's a little garbled. And then it's separating the logo from the word Nike in a way that Nike doesn't tend to do in their ads. In image number 2, you can see that it's starting to scramble the tagline that it's made for this even more. It's also started to shift the typography. So the typeface that you're seeing here is morphed differently than it had on the previous one. So we're getting into even weirder territory. When you go to the third image, it's kind of lost the plot of the concept. So not only is it further hiding the tagline that it's made, but we're not having the city concept anymore. So we're just in a trail place. When you get into 4 and 5, you can see that it kind of got, I guess, a little bit bored of its own name that it made for the shoe. So it started to riff on a different name. We moved from Terra shape to Ode shape. And then by image 6, it obviously had started to get really whimsical and take some major liberties with the brand. So it's going into a place where it's replacing the N in Nike, and it's really getting weird with the word forms, and using the swoosh twice. So all of that experiment happened in the space of 5 minutes. And what that illustrates to us is both the incredible opportunity when we think about generative AI and to the power of it to create something, but also the incredible risk that we're looking at in terms of turning over creative to these machines. And so that's why we're excited about this phrase. We think that modern businesses need polycognitive brands. So for us, what that means is that machines don't think the same way that humans do. So the brands that we have now need to appeal to both types of intelligences. So handing bots traditional brand guidelines just isn't going to be sufficient to help them produce brand building work. But that doesn't mean that you need to walk away from the revolutionary speed and scale that generative AI can bring to your work. It just means that you need to optimize how you're interfacing with that tech. That has taken us to something that we call bot-friendly branding. We've been thinking a lot about how to maximize the ability to use this technology, but in a way that is going to be positive for your brand and for your team. Bot-friendly branding to us is an intentional process-based way to leverage AI in content creation. It is informed by what generative AI is good at and also what it's not good at. It's designed to yield highly scalable, deeply consistent brand touch points, and it is a catalyst for internal alignment on how to use these tools in your team, that being something that is incredibly fractured right now. So in order to go into this, we think it would be helpful to go back to the example that we used with Nike in terms of how do we create images, and then look at how we created a Territorial a way for a consumer research company called Suzy to scale their own creative capacity and built a bot-friendly brand for them. So this happened in three key areas of a brand evolution project that we worked on with Susie. At this first phase in the brand design space, what we did is, as with any brand evolution, you're going to consolidate around key messages and must-win moments in the customer lifecycle. And then we thought carefully about how to create moments in this system where generative AI could help to drive efficiency and scale. So generative AI isn't great at doing all visual tasks, as we've already seen a little taste of. We also feel very strongly that you don't just say, hey, make me a brand to generative AI. It's not effective in that world, but it is effective in spaces like, for example, what we're looking at here, illustration. That ended up being a key area that Susie's brand needed to win. They do an enormous amount of thought leadership and white papers. So they need a lot of different varied imagery, but they want a level of consistency there. So illustration felt like a way that we could lean on generative AI to create an almost infinite image library for them to leverage in spaces like that. Then what that means is once we know that that's a space where we really want to win, and we want AI to help us, we can create prompt stacks. So you're looking at a prompt stack here for Midjourney. That prompt stack is optimized to create that wavy sort of squiggly texture image that we had in the previous slide, knowing that that's something that we wanted to use in their system in general. That means that we can kind of create these areas that the prompt stacks that can fit into their workflow and make sure that they're able to scale their brand really easily. And then finally, that moves into deployment for us. So once you've got those prompt stacks, we also made a library of videos for the Suzy team that help them to implement these prompt stacks and control consistency, onboard new team members, so that it's really simple for them to say, cool, I know when I want to use a background image that has those lovely squiggles, that I know that I can go to this area, leverage this technology, and get something that's going to be fresh, but also super consistent. So when we think about first step opportunities in leveraging generative AI for brands, brand imagery and brand voice are both places that we think are really great ways to rack up quick wins. On brand imagery, that can be with things like background imagery, textures, photography illustrations, even icon sets. On brand voice, that can look like things like blog and social posts, customer lifecycle emails, chatbot scripts, any place that you really want to brandify a lot of language. And so I know we've covered a lot of ground really quickly on this one. Just wanted to let you guys know that there's plenty more to dig into. You may have captured some screenshots as we're digging through these chunks really quickly, but don't worry, we're going to be following up with everybody here with a white paper that goes into a lot of these things in more detail. Our hope is that if you screenshot anything from our perspective, you screenshot this slide, we'd love to continue the conversation. You see our email address here. You can go to our website and there's a subscribe little dealie right there at the top. The website's weareterritorial.com. And if you're searching for us on LinkedIn, we're the little blue box. If you search Territorial, you should find us. So thank you all for that, and looking forward to diving into questions later. But first, back to you, Aidon, and over to Brian then.
Thank you so much, Topher. He shared more about how bots can support the brand process. And now we'll be handing it over to Brian, who will help us understand more about what AI might be saying about our brand. Take it away, Brian.
Thank you guys so much. Excited to share more about what we're doing at Evertune and coming at this from a slightly different angle. So building on what Topher said, we've seen that AI search has already reached mass adoption. I think sometimes there's a tendency to say, well, it's only the early adopter that's using ChatGPT or using Claude, but it's actually most Americans at this point. 72% of Americans have now used AI search. OpenAI has 500 million weekly unique users on ChatGPT, and Google's AI overviews are now in front of 1 billion people in 100 countries. So this has gone to scale faster than almost any marketing channel that we've ever seen. What's also happening is that most of the major tech platforms are building AI search natively into their products. So inside of Instagram or WhatsApp, Meta has built their Llama AI model search straight into those platforms. Apple and Siri have built in ChatGPT. Amazon has a tool called Rufus, which is their AI tool that's now listed on every product on Amazon. So even for the late adopting consumer who hasn't downloaded ChatGPT, they're not using Perplexity, they're now encountering the results of AI search in every major tech platform, whether they intended to or not. So we started Evertune about a year and a half ago. What we do is we try to help marketing teams and agencies understand three things. One, what are the AI models saying about their brand today? Are they recommending them? And then two, what do you do about it? What's the SEO equivalent in the AI space? How do you figure out which publishers matter to help AI models learn? And then what should you talk about to go and influence those models? So I'll take you through an example because I think there's a lot of correlation here with a lot of the branding work that happens for a company, in this case, Bose. So this is what sentiment analysis looks like for Bose when you're asking about portable speakers. And so what we're doing is we're prompting the AI models like Gemini, Llama, Perplexity, Claude, ChatGPT thousands of times. And the first thing we do is we ask them to write a review of the Bose portable speaker. And the more positive the word in sentiment, the darker green it is. The more red or pink, the more negative. So you can see that this is a water-resistant speaker. It's got really high sound quality. Battery life, more middle of the road. It's a little bit expensive, not great for budget-conscious buyers. We track this for brands, and we actually look at it week to week, month over month, and we'll see this change quite a bit. As the AI models read things on the internet, as they consume more information, as they learn from marketing campaigns and PR campaigns, they change their perceptions of a brand. They'll actually change the types of words they use to describe it. These are, after all, language models. The types of words they use to describe your brand are super important. And then we ask some questions from a non-branded standpoint, unaided. So if someone goes to a major AI model and they ask, it's summertime, looking for a speaker to take to the park, to take outside my backyard, what's the best portable speaker? Here's how often Bose is being recommended overall. So on average, they're being recommended 86% of the time across thousands of different prompts asking similar questions to the AI models. But the models have different opinions. So DeepSeek is a lot more likely to recommend Bose than Gemini is, about a 13-point swing. We'll sometimes see in these models, Doug, they can be up to a 40 or 50-point swing as the models have different opinions. They're trained on different data, they're trained in different ways, and so they can have very different biases in terms of which brands and products that they recommend. This is what the category looks like. So if you go ask thousands of times, what's the best portable speaker to the different models, you can start to see patterns emerge over time. JBL is the clear winner in the category. Bose is number 2. UE Boom is a strong contender. And then you start seeing bigger differences between models. So for example, Sony is not being recommended very much by Meta inside of Facebook and Instagram, but it's being recommended all the time by DeepSeek. Meta prefers a brand like Marshall or Tribit or Beats. And so you start to see these patterns emerge where each model will recommend different brands, different times. And these preferences will change month over month, just like Google search results did. The big difference here is that in AI, every answer to every consumer is different. We're not seeing the same 10 blue links that you normally see in Google search results. Then we try to understand, well, why is this happening? What do the models know about Bose that causes them to recommend that speaker or not recommend it? And so if you look at this chart, this x-axis here, these are the features of a speaker that the AI models think matter the most. It's about sound quality, battery life, price, etc. And then we ask the models, well, if I'm looking for the best speaker in terms of sound quality, Gemini in this case is recommending Bose 100% of the time. But in battery life, Bose is only being recommended 24% of the time. On design, it's being recommended a lot less. And so very quickly, you can understand this is how the AI model perceives your brand. This is really just a reflection of the internet. These are the things that the model has read on user review sites, on places where they've reviewed these products, on lots of different websites that cover Bose in the speaker category. And then we can show a brand versus competitors. So we often will look at, okay, Bose and UE Boom are the two category leaders here. How do they compare? And the models have very strong feelings about which brand is good at different attributes. And so in battery life, we know UE Boom has a much higher score than Bose in terms of how often it's being recommended. And that plays out in reality. The battery life for the UE Boom is about 24 hours for the speaker. It's only 12 hours for Bose. So that's based in factual data. There are other times, though, when we find that the models don't always know the right answer. There's actually a lot of white space for brands to use content and PR and communications to fill that blank space where the model doesn't always know as much about a certain feature set. What do brands do with this data? Well, a couple things. The first is we help them understand what are the publishers that are being cited the most by the AI model. So these are being cited the most. These have a lot of content about the portable speaker category. And so it's places like Best Buy, ratings.com, What Hi-Fi. These are specialist sites devoted to speakers. And so we'll give a list of domains, URLs, websites for the brand to focus on for partnering for content, affiliate partnerships, doing retail partnership deals. And then we help them understand what to say. So based on the brand's strengths and weaknesses as perceived by AI, we actually generate content in our platform. And so we call this the AI education brief. In this case, we focus on a message here. This is generated automatically. I'm talking about, well, Bose is not as great with battery life, but it's focusing on sound quality over the quantity of hours available. So how do you build a counter message for what is a true weakness for that product? And we see brand clients of ours taking this to say, how do I use this with a social influencer team? How do I use this to go build out a PR brief and start doing different messages around this based on different feature sets within the brand? Where this is headed next is commerce. So ChatGPT in the past few weeks has now offered the ability to buy a product directly from its interface. So they're now providing product links here to the UE Boom portable speaker. Perplexity is doing the same. They've integrated with Shopify and PayPal. So what that means is the sales funnel is starting to condense, going from researching a product, comparing models to actually being able to buy it all in one place. A couple of takeaways. So first, I mentioned the sales funnel is condensing that user customer journey from learning about a brand, going to the rest of the internet to research it, coming back. We've seen that cycle in lots of different categories from B2B to consumer electronics is condensing rapidly as the consumer moves to do more inside of the AI model. The second is AI models prefer authoritative content. And what that means is things like PR, content partners, affiliate, influencers, they matter more than ever. They actually have greater influence with the AI model than your brand.com website. Something we help a lot of brands with is how to speak simply. AI models can struggle with complex branding or product hierarchies or sister brands or parent brands, especially with rebrands. It takes a while for a large language model, which is trained on trillions of words of data, to understand that the brand used to be called X and now it's called Y. Last, broadly, I would recommend thinking of AI models as a new audience to reach. This is a new type of constituent. It's super powerful. It's going to influence lots of other people. And these models learn in different ways. And so one simple example is a lot of the clients we work with, they have different graphics on their site, infographics, things describing their product versus a competitor. The models can struggle to read those. So sometimes a brand will go and translate that into text or give simple explanations or FAQs to talk about its product. But it wants as much information as possible about the brand, about the product, about the company to answer any possible question that's out there from the consumer. If you want to learn more, happy to share. We're at evertune.ai, and I've got a team of folks happy to tell you more. And for lots of brands, we run these reports. We show them what AI is saying about them today. And happy to turn back to Aiden and Topher, open up for questions.
Thank you so much, Brian. And thank you so much, Topher, for taking us through what it means for a brand to be ready for the AI revolution and what you can start doing right now. We have a couple questions, but feel free to drop in more. There should be a Q&A in the bottom bar of your Zoom, so feel free to submit there. I have a couple questions. So actually, Brian, are there any concerns that you might get a worse or watered down brand when you start to focus on making your brand legible to AI rather than humans? Or is something else going on?
I think the biggest risk that we see is when the model doesn't know anything about the brand. So we've worked with some companies where the models learn by crawling the internet, similar to like a search crawler comes in from Google to your website. And some brands that will actually block the crawler coming in from AI. And that might make sense if you're the New York Times and you don't want the AI model to take all your content without paying for it. But from a brand point of view, if consumers are going into the model to ask questions, you want the model to know as much as possible about your brand and your products. And so opening up that information is important. I also think it's important to understand the models are looking to differentiate. Like as the AI models get more specific based on your previous search history, who you might be from a demographic standpoint and customizing answers for you. They want to be able to know, okay, you have kids, you have a pool in your backyard, you need a speaker that's waterproof, and be able to make recommendations in that way. And so the more specificity you have in general, the better for AI.
Thank you so much, Brian. Really helpful. I want to take a moment to turn it over to Topher. You had mentioned polycognitive. I not Our listeners don't seem to be familiar with that term. Would you be able to define that for us?
Yeah, I mean, what we were looking for is a way to describe the fact that brands currently, in terms of how they're being um, marked down in guidelines and documented in identity systems, are being built specifically for human brains. And human brains just think in a very different way than machine brains do. Machine brains need a lot more stuff to reference, and they need a lot more clear things. Um, Human brains are actually still better a lot of times at kind of like looking at one thing and being able to extrapolate that into a wide set, but understand the larger guidelines. There's a lot of kind of context that the brain of a graphic designer understands that an AI is not currently bringing to that unless you tell them specifically that that's what you want them to look at. So what that meant to us is that there's a huge opportunity to think about how to design in what is, a core strength of design in general, which is with empathy. So how do you design with end user empathy in mind? But in this case, that end user empathy is not a human who has a specific use case or is looking for a specific thing for the brand, but instead, how do you design with cognitive empathy around how the brain of a thing is going to digest this information that isn't a human? So polycognitive to us is an important term because it means that your brand needs to be something that can be understood by human brains and robot brains.
Super fascinating. Definitely a word to add to our general vernacular. We have a couple other listener questions, and I think this one is for Brian, but of course, Topher, if you have any points of view you'd like to share, feel free to jump in. There was a question around if I wanted to get started in a small way with AI optimization, what would be a good starting point? Would it be asking AI platforms about my brand and industry, see where they're mostly citing, and then focus on those places for PR and marketing efforts?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So one caveat I'll mention is that if any of us were to go ask about the company we work for in an AI model, you're going to get a very different response than the average person, because chances are you've probably searched for that before and it remembers that and it'll tailor its results for you in that way. So asking the question in a more neutral way is how we try to solve that problem. But yes, I'd say that the two easiest steps: one, finding places where it's clear the AI model doesn't have a lot of information and using it as a chance to educate. That can be owned content on your own site. But then second, yes, I think we've seen a lot of clients work with PR and communications to focus on, here are a few of the publishers that matter, or here are some communities that matter. Reddit is a great example. There's a lot of user forums on Reddit and other sites where the AI models like having clear human-generated content that has depth of expertise on a subject, and those are really easy ways to start.
One of the things that I love that Brian has emphasized that is just fascinating to see as AI becomes a more popular search destination is that it is putting bias towards things that we would already naturally consider to be more human touch points. And so it's a really interesting thing that like AI driven search puts PR more in the driver's seat, because we've seen PR be so diminished by things like SEM and a lot of like search driven, more performance driven marketing. Like that has undervalued, in my opinion, PR, which has always been an important component of a brand's world, but it has kind of been occluded by the like metrics driven, performance driven marketing models. And so, excuse me, I think it's just fascinating to see that the things that Brian, you're talking about are like brand differentiation, human substantiation, a really clear idea of use case. Like we're folding back in a lot of humanity into the like must win components of a high performing brand online by adding AI into this. And I think that that duality is just fascinating and it's super interesting to live in.
Yes. And I think that takes us really nicely into our last question. I know it's just 2:30 Eastern for those of you who are also based on the East Coast. But we're going to take this last question and then we will wrap up. This one's also for Brian, but again, I think Topher, thoughts from you would be really great here as well. Do you see a use case for the Evertune comparison tool for human strategists? Looking at comparisons between similar products seems really helpful for identifying differentiation points, even outside of the AI focus.
Yeah, I'm so glad someone asked that. What we've seen is that often our starting person using the tool from a brand is like the SEO person or the insights or analytics teams. But then we have a lot of others log in and they come to that exact conclusion, which is like, this is a pretty good focus group of the internet. This is how the entirety of the internet feels about our product. If you go across user reviews, professional reviews, everything else. And at times when I think brands can be sometimes drowning in analytics or data, we try to sum that up very clearly of like, here's what AI reflecting the internet thinks about your brand. And so absolutely, we've seen clients where we had a fashion client and there's pretty resounding data that the quality of their shirts was considered low. That wasn't just a marketing thing for them. That went to be a manufacturing concern of like, how do we actually improve the quality of these shirts? So it tended to be more in the line of market research than it did AI optimization. So yeah, there's a lot of, I think, positive secondary effects from using a tool like this.
I mean, we're from a, even from a, I definitely co-sign the strategic component where it's like, yes, this stuff that Evertune is surfacing is just like so insightful and interesting. I think it also, because it's couched in human terms, starts to lend itself towards creative applications as well. Because you're being described, things are being described in natural language. You're being able to dig into sources and find how real humans are engaging with a product. And so strategically, that's huge. But that also, once you get into this strategy, that also gives you a really quick ... into how do you start to bring your brand to life? What are the things you need to activate? In this shirt example, there's a production component. And then once you get into the production component, you also have all the data you need to figure out how to creatively activate against those challenges that you are facing to sort of try and lift brand perception, adjust that in a different way. The brief starts to become really clear and the creative implications start to come to life as well. So I think it's fascinating to see how that much amount of data can be summed up in human terms and therefore make it a lot more relevant and actionable.
Yes, fantastic. And thank you so much to Topher and Brian and to all of you for joining us today. It's a bit of a rapid fire 30 minutes, but hopefully there was a lot to learn and more to learn. So as part of your registration to this webinar, we will also be sending through a white paper that Topher had mentioned earlier about how to prepare your brand for AI. And of course, to learn more about Territorial and how we help brands find their place in the world, you can check us out at weareterritorial.com and follow us on LinkedIn. To learn more about Evertune and about what AI is telling consumers about your brand, you can visit Evertune's website at evertune.ai and also follow them on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for joining.
All right, that was legit fascinating. As a lifelong writer, writing is my vocation, so I started in advertising. It is gratifying to the point of near Schadenfreude that the written word is now coming back as the primary mode of communication. I mean, all those years of people saying, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, apparently that is not the case for generative AI. So that is amazing to learn.
Yeah, and I just feel like the conversation of thinking about brands internally and then thinking about it outside, and how your brand is actually being searched and viewed by AI is kind of wild. It almost levels the playing field in a way. I mean, some of these historical brands sure have brands that have been out there for a while, but when Brian talked about what it means to relaunch a brand now,
Right.
or bring a brand to market, pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, I actually love how he said that the different AI have different the different AI artificial, the different AI, not
Yeah.
AIs, AI, the different AI have different opinions. Like he said, they have different opinions about stuff. I thought that was really, really fascinating.
Well, for all of you, you've been listening to Strange Coordinates, the show where we use brands as roadmaps to arrive at surprising places. To learn more about our agency Territorial, you can go to our website at weareterritorial.com and join our newsletter so you can learn more about upcoming webinars and other fun stuff that we do. Thanks so much.
Thank you all. We'll see you next time.